Hey folks, today we're talking about gluing acrylic. So with the advancements in the home availability of laser slicers and the fact that acrylic is generally fun and easy to work with, we're going to talk about gluing it. Now the chances are pretty good that you're here because you got one of my kits. And on my kits, I always put indexes in that's going to make gluing, putting the pieces together and gluing easy. So today we're going to talk about the gluing process. We're going to talk about what you need to do the gluing, and we're going to talk about a few things to watch out for while you're gluing to make sure that it's easy for you and you don't have any weird mistakes. So with that, let's get started. So the things you're absolutely going to need, first off, is glue. Now remember, this glue is pretty volatile, which means that it evaporates quickly. So when you're using it, be sure not to leave it with the lid off. When you buy it, you're going to see that there's a protective lid on the inside. You're going to want to either pop that out or poke holes in it. And this just basically keeps everything from sloshing around. But when you're done, be sure to put the lid on super tight. Next, you're going to need a funnel. And this funnel is to help get the glue into the applicator for you. And then third, you're going to need the applicator. Now, the applicators are basically just squeeze bottles that have either a metal or plastic needle on them, depending on what kind you buy. And the needles come in a variety of sizes. I recommend something that's in the 20 range. I've seen them commercially available up to the 40 and 50 range, but something that's like a 23 or a 25 would be about perfect for this. Reason being is that we're going to actually put a little bit of a vacuum on this applicator to keep the glue from leaking out when you're putting it on. And we'll go through that process here in a minute. Optional items you may need. You might need some clamps or angles to hold whatever you're gluing together. If you don't have clamps or angles, you can use heavy objects like sandbags or paint cans to keep things in position. Just be sure that when you're setting it up to be glued, you leave plenty of room to get in with your hand and the applicator so that you have easy access and you're not struggling against your braces to do the gluing. The next thing you're going to need is some kind of an old cotton towel. I have a bunch of towels that are no good for the house anymore that I keep in the workplace that are perfect for such a thing. When you're gluing, if you're on something smooth, the chances of the glue getting down and leaking all over your workspace, you don't want that to happen. So working on a cotton towel prevents it from leaking and smearing on the bottom of whatever you're working with. Also, use cotton instead of some kind of a poly cloth, because poly will actually be melted by the acrylic glue and will just make matters worse. So this is a trick that I've learned through a lot of trial and error. So we're using one of my bases as an example. So the first thing we're going to do is put down the towel, then put down the base plate. Now we're going to dry fit the rest of the parts into it, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a clamp. And again, if you don't have a clamp, you can stabilize it with some other heavy object. My sets go together pretty well without a lot of coercion, but certain things may need a little bit more bracing. Now we're going to apply the glue. Now this gets to the critical part. What you want to do now is you want to open up your glue, you want to open up your applicator, and you want to get your funnel handy. So put your funnel in, and you're going to want to fill the applicator about a third of the way up. Now you're not going to want to fill it up too much because, again, remember this is volatile and you don't want to be dumping it back into the can too much. So fill it about a third of the way up. And too little, you won't be able to do the next trick. Now this is one of the most important steps when you're working with acrylic glue. You're going to want to take your bottle and squeeze it and then turn it upside down and let it gurgle. And now you're going to want to work with it in this position because it's going to prevent drips from dripping out and getting onto your material. Now, if you do drip, here's the important fact number 2. Don't wipe your drips up. Wait for them to dry, and then they can buff out with various buffing compounds or even sensitive toothpaste. Brasso will also work, but if you try to wipe it, you risk smearing the glue and actually smudging your plastic worse. So if you do get dribbles, just let them dry. Worry about them after the fact. They're a lot easier to clean up versus being spread out if you try to buff them out. So that said, let's get to gluing. Now it's really important that the two surfaces that you're trying to glue together are touching each other. You want as little material or any kind of garbage between point A and point B as possible. If they're perfectly abutted, this is exactly where we want to be. Now acrylic glue glues by melting both sides and then joining them together as they harden again. So we're going to go ahead and trace a bead here at the bottom of the stand. and you can see it leak in and actually get in the bottom of the stand. Now I start away from the cracks and work my way towards the tab. And this is exactly what you want. You don't want too much so that it leaks everywhere. I would rather do too little and go back and do it again than putting too much and run the risk of having it leak where I don't want it to go. Then you're going to want to let that sit for about 3 hours. It takes 24 hours to fully cure, but it's workable to the point where you can move it in about 2 or 3 hours. So we're going to go ahead and let this sit, and then we're going to come back to the next step. Okay, it's about 3 hours later. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get another towel or something soft, and we're going to tip this stand on its side. Now it's important that the plaque side is, again, horizontal to the ground, because we don't want our glue dribbling everywhere or running in places that we don't want it. So the closer this is to horizontal, the better. So be sure to stuff something under the narrow edge of the stand so that the horizontal is horizontal. Now we're going to glue both sides again on top. Side 1, side 2, and then in about 3 hours we're going to come back and do the other side. And with that, you've got a fully cured stand. So now after 24 hours, we can go ahead and put our model on it or do whatever we want to do. And again, there's a lot of applications that you can do with acrylic, and it's really fun to work with. In fact, you can use that same gluing technique to laminate multiple pieces together and make all kinds of shapes. Just remember that when you're working with acrylic after the fact, anytime you're doing any sanding or maybe matte gas polishing, you want to wear the appropriate eye and breathing protection because the particles can be nasty. It's effectively fiberglass, and you don't want that getting into your lungs, you don't want it getting into your eyes, and really you don't want it getting on your skin. So be sure to wear your proper personal protection equipment. And with that, go out, experiment a little bit, and enjoy.